Today, we're going to have a look at Danzig's 1996 effort Blackacidevil, and why it was such a radical shift in direction for the band. Here's a quick recap of all things Danzig up until that point. The band signed to Rick Rubin's Def America label in the late 80s. Debut release Danzig came out in 1988, and introduced the world to their blues-infused hard rock style. 1990 saw Danzig 2 Lucifuge release, and it delved further into the heavy blues sound with Danzig's iconic powerful vocals and dark themes. The third album, Danzig 3 How the Gods Kill, was released in 1992, and shifted towards a slightly heavier sound. Not as bluesy as the first two records, but it was well received nonetheless. It was with the release of the EP Thrall Demons Sweat Live, and the release of a live version of the song Mother that the band broke through to the mainstream. They garnered heavy rotation on MTV and radio, and the band finally achieved more mainstream success. 1994 saw Danzig 4P released, and it started experimentation with industrial elements, introspective lyrics, and a slight nod back to the bluesy grooves of the first two albums. Whilst not held to the same high regard as the first three albums, it's still a solid chunk of Danzig-y goodness. The albums were similar in the delivery, but still showed evolution and were well received. It was at this point in which the band was at the height of their success. They signed a deal with Hollywood Records and was ready to release the next album to an eager public. And what the public got was Blackacidevil. What the f***? Gone are the powerful vocals, hard-edged blues/metal sound, and any semblance of what the world knew as the band Danzig.
It's gone. It's all gone.
Instead, the listener is greeted with effects-laden vocals, drum machines, and just a complete shift in style. What was Glenn thinking? The lineup is completely different. Longtime members Chuck Biscuits, Eerie Von, and John Christ are gone, although it should be noted that Chuck was already out of the band just after the release of Danzig 4. Any mainstream attention the band had quickly disappeared. The momentum stopped, and many fans, both old and new, were left completely bewildered. Now at this point, it should be said that I'm a big Danzig fan. I have all of the albums, I have VHS, DVDs, shirts, a belt buckle that digs into me and tears holes into every shirt that I wear it with. I've got posters in my living room, on my fridge, flags, titties, you name it. If there was a band that I'm a fan of, it is most definitely Danzig. And even I struggle to like this album. It's so far removed from any of the other albums. It's like the metal world's version of Lou Reed's Metal Machine music, although I guess at this point Lulu probably takes that spot, but I digress. Lyrically, it is still a Danzig album. The dark themes covering death and sex are all there, but it's just covered up with so much noise that it's difficult to enjoy. Tracks like Sacrificed are more palatable because, for the most part, you can hear Glenn's vocals, but on so many of the songs, Glenn's vocals are completely lost in the mix. The reason a lot of people like Danzig is because of Glenn's powerful vocal performances. Sure, he went a little bit too Cookie Monster with Thrall and 4, but they were still present and carried so much weight and emotion, and that is just completely missing from this album. There are some tracks where you can hear his vocals a lot more clearly. Ashes is a good example of that. But for the most part, they're gone. See All You Were is another song that I think has potential to be really great. But again, the melody and the performance is just lost under a sea of effects. Musically, it's hard to decipher what is programmed and what is real. And sure, you could argue that programmed instruments are still real, but the organicness that was there on those first four albums is just completely gone. There are real guitars in there, and sometimes you can hear them, but gone are the great guitar solos. They wouldn't really make a proper return until 2002's Luciferi. And the performances by the band members that were there at the time are just kind of missing, Joey C, great drummer, but I have no idea if he's actually drumming or if it's just programmed drums. I think it's actually a bit of a blend of both, but at this point, I just don't really care. So why is this video titled In Defense of Blackacidevil if all I've done so far is just moan about how much I hate it? I guess this is more of a defense of Glenn himself opposed to the album. Glenn Danzig is Danzig. Danzig isn't a band, it's one man. Yes, he has a band, but they are only there to play his music. This was the way the band was always meant to be. He is able to have a revolving lineup if he so wishes, and has complete creative control over whatever is released. And the radical shift in style is what Glenn wanted. Not what the other band members wanted, not what his label wanted, not what the management wanted, hell, not even what the fans wanted, but it's what he wanted. If we look historically at Glenn's music, these sudden changes are not a new thing. Let's start with the Misfits. Static Age is a great album. It's not hardcore punk, it's not horror punk, it's just kind of a mixed bag of whatever Glenn wanted to do. It has fast songs, it has slow songs, it's just whatever he wanted to make at the time. The evolution to Walk Among Us is apparent. It has a similar production with every song, the themes are more sci-fi, and the album as a whole is pretty campy and actually quite fun. Their lineup with themselves is slightly more solidified, as is their image. And the change continues with the next album. Earth AD, Wolf's Blood, the style is faster, it's more abrasive to the listener, and with much darker themes compared to Walk Among Us. If you compare these three albums, they could easily have been from three different bands, but they're not. And the one common thing with these three albums is Glenn. Samhain further showed Glenn's change in musical direction, with the overtly dark themes and presentation being the focal point. And now if you compare Samhain to the first Danzig album, it's a completely different style altogether. So it's clear that Glenn is always looking to evolve his sounds and will happily go in whatever direction he wishes. And this is where I kind of look at Blackacidevil and imagine I was in Glenn's position at the time. So you've grinded away for like 2 decades making music, performing, and you've reached a point where you've achieved mainstream success. Bigger opportunities, more money, more fame, and more eyes are on you than ever before. I, for one, would be thinking, okay, how do I maintain this? I would probably try and write an album of great songs, in a similar style to what worked before, i.e. what made myself popular, and try to ride that wave carefully and for as long as possible. The music industry is a very fickle thing, and popular music within the industry changes all the time. I, for one, would be thinking that it's been a very long journey up until this point, and I want to try and make the whole journey worth it. Glenn, however, probably said, "Fuck you, I'm doing this instead." It's incredibly ballsy. He's not stupid. He knows that by making an industrial metal album, he will alienate himself from the mainstream, and he will lose a huge chunk of his newly found audience. But he did it anyway, because, to put it simply, that's what he's always done. The fans that he maintains after this change are fans of Danzig as a whole, not a fan of Lucifuge or Danzig 1 or Mother, but fans of Glenn himself. And I guess this is why Glenn has managed to maintain a career for so long. Sure, the venues aren't as grand, but he always has had a loyal fan base regardless. And some would argue that he's actually more popular now than ever before with the recent Misfits reunion shows. They did sell out Madison Square Garden after all. And Glenn just keeps doing what he wants to do as and when he wants to do it, even if those ventures do produce some questionable results. And that's why I guess I'm defending this album, really. The album itself, I don't really listen to very often because it's just not very good. I don't like it. But, when you look at it as a whole and if you look at the journey Glenn took up until that point, it was a really brave move. And it was something where it truly shows that he was sticking to his guns. He was sticking to what he wanted to do, for better or for worse. He could have easily at that point sold out and just carried on making the same sort of music that worked to provide as much revenue and success and money, but he didn't want to. He just decided he wanted to do an industrial album completely out of the blue. And fair enough, it didn't completely kill his career. It stopped a lot of momentum, but he's continued to have a pretty fruitful career after that. So I guess that's just my opinion on it all. And I don't know. I just wanted to make a video about it. So if you've stayed to the end, you're a real G. Anyway, take care, stay strong, and I'll see you next time.